Yeah. So the term carbon footprint is thrown around a lot in green circles. Although we have a general idea of its meaning, it's just nothing but one's impact on the planet. Okay, so whatever impact any organization or any institution or any factory or something is actually, having onto the planet. Because the word itself says it is a carbon footprint. Here we will be definitely, more concerned about what is the carbon dioxide release or output, or we can also say greenhouse emissions from that particular organization. In other organizations, carbon footprint might mean everything that is still from sourcing materials, manufacturing, distribution, use, disposal, and so on. So we already talked about. Okay, so we can say. There will be different any organization, okay, will have different areas of working. Okay, so whenever we talk about any organization, okay, and because there is variations in organization. Okay, some organization will be focusing on IT development, and some will be working on manufacturing more. Okay, some will be working on manufacturing more. Okay, some will be basically industries. Okay, some will be, we can say, working into the healthcare. Okay, and so on. So there are variations in organizations. Now point is that it doesn't matter whatever organization you are there. Definitely we know that if we talk about manufacturing industrial organization, the amount of carbon dioxide release is immensely high. Even if it is an IT organization, the amount of carbon dioxide release will be high due to the huge amount of electricity, we can say, consumption over there. So in some organizations the carbon footprint will be very high. There will be so many different areas, okay, which starts from, as already noted, manufacturing, distribution, okay, use, everything will be considered. Okay, the way the start of that industry and the delivery to which, okay, it reaches to the consumer, and then how what at all it happens. So at times there may not be direct impact, so we will see about them. Okay, we will look about them. So point is that all any organization, whatever carbon dioxide release is there or whatever greenhouse emission is there, that is nothing but, we can say, the carbon footprint of that organization. Okay, now uh, हम इसको और कैसे सिंपल सिंपल वे में समझ सकते हैं. द टोटल अमाउंट ऑफ ग्रीन हाउस गैसेस प्रोड्यूस टू directly or indirectly support human activities. Support human activities, or we can also say support organization activities. मतलब कि किसी भी organization का डायरेक्ट या इनडायरेक्टली जो भी एक्टिविटीज होता है, ओके, उससे जो कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड रिलीज हो रहा है या उससे जो ग्रीन हाउस गैस एमिशंस हो रहा है, उसको हम बोलेंगे कार्बन फुटप्रिंट. ओके, सो नाउ लेट्स से हम एक एग्जांपल ले रहे हैं. इन अदर वर्ड्स, व्हेन यू ड्राइव अ कार, द engine burns fuel which creates a certain amount of carbon dioxide डिपेंडिंग ऑन इट्स फ्यूल कंजप्शन एंड ड्राइविंग डिस्टेंस. ओके, मतलब कि जितना अगर हम ज़्यादा कार को ड्राइव करेंगे उतना ज़्यादा हमारा फ्यूल कंजम्पशन होगा, और जितना ज़्यादा हमारा फ्यूल कंजम्पशन होगा उतना ही ज़्यादा हमारा CO2 एनवायरनमेंट में रिलीज होगा. ओके, when you heat your house with oil, gas or coal, then also you generate carbon dioxide. Even if you heat your house with electricity, the generation of electrical power may also have emitted a certain amount of CO2. Now, जो इलेक्ट्रिसिटी हम लोग यूज़ कर रहे हैं, वो इलेक्ट्रिसिटी हमने तो नहीं जनरेट की है, कहीं पे जनरेट हो रही है, लेकिन जब वो जनरेट हो रही है तभी भी CO2 रिलीज हो रहा है. तो भले ही हम ऐसा बोल सकते हैं, हम कोई ऐसा एक्टिविटी नहीं कर रहे जिससे हम डायरेक्टली CO2 को रिलीज कर रहे हैं एयर में, बट if at all I am generating electricity, and if to generate electricity, okay, the source where the electricity is generated, if their CO2 is being released, then indirectly I am also a part of it. Okay, let's say talking about a car, if let's say if you sit in an auto, or let's say you pull up a car, or let's say you rent up a car, okay, so you say no, this car is not mine, okay, then how I'm responsible for CO2 generation? So no, even if this car is not your, or even if this taxi is not your, or even if this auto is not your, but because you have traveled, okay, let's say you have traveled 2 hours into it, then definitely whatever is there somewhere or the other, you are responsible for it. So this is, so the point is that that it simply doesn't mean whether we own that thing or not, or whether we generate that thing or not, somewhere or the other. That's why it is said that even if you're consuming, okay, or even if you're using, then also somewhere or the other you are a part of that thing. When you buy food and goods, the production of food and goods might also have some quantities of CO2. So if you go to a grocery store and let's say you buy two packets of biscuits and let's say one packet of cold drink and let's say some other thing, okay, let's say there are 10 12 things that you buy, then also you are responsible for certain emission of carbon dioxide into the air, because the place where these all things were generated, the place at which they were manufactured, the place at which they were packaged, then using some transportation medium they have reached to you. It is not like that okay, you are directly going to industry and buy a packet of a biscuit, okay. The biscuit packet, at times, is made somewhere in a different state which is extremely far away from where you are. So there is a huge amount of transportation which has been taken place and it has reached over here. So whatever all this, again, it was being manufactured over there, it was being produced over there, it was being packaged over there, okay. So all these things, okay, it will sum up uh, to the release of CO2, and that's how, even if we buy it, then some way or the other we are responsible for it. So yeah, this is I can say this is the brief about what we call it as carbon footprint, and it is very 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 important for any organization to know or to be aware about the carbon footprint, because if the carbon footprint will be very 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 high, then they have to take certain steps, because if the carbon footprint is very high, it simply means the organization is doing a lot of damage to the environment. So then the organization have to take certain steps in which the organization can turn into more, we can say, environmental friendly approach. Okay. So now how we can actually measure the carbon footprint, okay, because there will be different organizations, okay, they all will be working differently. So we can say that there are some generalized steps by which you can measure your carbon footprint. Okay, the first step says define what is included into your carbon footprint. Okay, so you have to define, whenever I'm going to take a carbon footprint of my organization, which are the things which I'm going to include. So let's say if it is an hospital, the things which it would include for finding a carbon footprint will be different. If it is an industry which is, let's say, manufacturing footwear, the things which it will write to define the carbon footprint will be different. Let's say if it is an IT industry, then again the things which it will define to calculate their carbon footprint will be different. Set your baseline, which means from which date and year you are going to start taking your carbon footprint. So first thing would be you haven't taken the carbon footprint at all, okay, so then you have to start from which. Now most of the time, okay, uh, for most of the organizations, okay, the carbon footprint, okay, is mostly taken on annual basis. What is annual basis? The carbon footprint is taken once in a year. So let's say the last carbon footprint, has happened on, let's say, first, or I can say, 31st December 2019. Then the next carbon footprint will be so when it was taken on 31st December 2019, it was taken for one whole year. So which means all the activities from you can consider from first Jan 2018. So now when the next carbon footprint will be taken, all the things, okay, all the activities into that organization starting from 1 Jan 2020 till, we can say, 30th December 2020 will be considered, and we can say the outcome of that carbon footprint will be in a report which will be there on, let's say, 31st December 2020, something like that. So that is the idea behind baseline. So most of the organizations will go on for annual basis. Now, if an organization is very large, which means, it is it is actually a very big industry, there are so many things into it, then in those cases, okay, the carbon footprint can be taken on, we can say, biannual basis, which means it can be taken twice in a year. Okay, it can be taken twice in a year depending on it. Okay, else for most of the industries or organization, it takes place on annual basis. Now, so this is the next thing. So first thing is that you have to discuss and define for which all areas you are going to take carbon footprint. That will depend on the type of the organization for which the carbon footprint is being taken on. Second is set your baseline. Next is track, calculate, and analyze your footprint. Okay, track, calculate. Okay, because you are going to calculate have your footprint for one whole year. So at every small activity, okay, you have to keep on tracking what is going on. Okay, so for every day tracking will happen. Then after every month, you can keep on calculating, and the calculation keeps on increasing and increasing as the days and months pass. Okay, at the end, when you have your carbon footprint ready, you have to analyze, which means what has happened. Are the things better than the previous year? Are the things worse than the previous year? Is there some area which is actually releasing more amount of carbon dioxide? So let's say in an industry some of the machines are not working well, or let's say there are some electrical appliances which are very old. What you will see while you have tracked and calculated the carbon footprint of those things, just taking you an example. Okay, let's say in an industry there is a production, okay, area where there are 2 to 3 machines, and what we see when we have calculated that carbon footprint, that those machines are actually releasing huge amount of carbon dioxide, which is equivalent to, let's say, 20-30 machines, okay, which are there in another production area. So then there is a time to analyze what has happened. Is there something which needs to be changed? Is there something which needs to be upgraded? That all can be taken care of. Once your carbon footprint report is there, you have to share with the stakeholders will be of that organization, the users of that organization. Okay, it could be some government people, so that okay, they can come to know that how much impact the organization is doing onto the environment. So this is the major 4 steps which are involved in calculating or in measuring the carbon footprint. First is define what is included into your carbon footprint. Second is set your baseline. Next is track, calculate, and analyze your footprint. Next is report your results to the stakeholders, or we can say show your results to the stakeholders. Okay, now yeah, so it was define your borders. Okay, define your borders, which means to which different areas, okay, you will be actually calculating your carbon footprint. So this is just one of the example that we have taken, and if you will see, the example is more of a data center or an IT industry, but depending on the organization that you select, okay, this will change. Now, what you see in define your borders is that there are 3 areas. The first area is direct impact, which means okay, you cannot ignore this area, and this will be the major area which will be responsible for generating or emitting carbon dioxide. Next is upstream impacts. Okay, upstream impacts are something, okay, which are basically, we can say, not directly related to us, but somehow or the other, okay, they have an impact, and because they have an impact onto our mechanism. Okay, so because of them, we can say, because of them this thing started. And next is downstream impacts. Okay, we can say downstream impacts will basically be some of the necessities, okay, which are necessary to be taken care of, something like that. Now the point is that whenever we have a new organization, okay, we have to segregate now and understand which are the areas which are a part of this organization. So because we have taken an example of data center, okay, so the major segregation comes out to be, let's say, data center power use, manufacturing, okay, cooling, okay, transportation. Now here, let's say you can talk about manufacturing and transportation, okay, as a different organization, and let's say you can relate cooling and data center power use as a different part of an organization. So as of now, we can say, these two processes will go more of in organizations, okay, which are related to produce something or something like that, whereas cooling and data center power use will go mostly into the IT organizations. Now, what could be the upstream impact, okay, of transportation and manufacturing? Why manufacturing will happen, why transportation will happen? Okay, there has to be suppliers. So some part of carbon dioxide release which is being taken by the suppliers will also be taken care of while I'm going to, uh, while I'm going to, I can say, calculate the carbon footprint. What is the downstream impact after the manufacturing and transportation, or after manufacturing, where there will be some waste which will be generated, okay, and what impact waste is also having to the environment, or what amount of carbon dioxide release it is having to the environment, that also I have to consider. Okay, so this is one thing. Now let's take in another example, okay, which is shown to us. So the direct impact is, let's say, cooling and data center power use. Okay, now for data center power use or for cooling, we will be buying electricity from some electrical vendor. Okay, so let's say, we have bought electricity from EBC company. So this electricity utility, let's say the electricity company is not a direct impact, but some other at other place they are producing electricity and we are actually using that electricity, so that is an upstream impact. Okay, next, what is a downstream impact? For a data center to work, there will be some employees and we will be giving them commuting, which means we will be providing them some, we can say, transportation facilities. Okay, so this is how, they are related. So for employee commuting, you might be, using a bus, and let's say that bus will not wholly be occupied for employee commuting, but yes, for some amount of time it is serving. So in that aspect, okay, this will be the upstream and the downstream impact, and this will be the direct impact. Okay, so when an upstream and a downstream impact is there, over there we can say some percent of carbon dioxide release which it does to the environment, we will be responsible for. But for direct impact, whatever total amount of carbon dioxide which we are releasing, we will be responsible for. Okay, so this is the idea behind, we can say, different kinds of places, or we can say borders, uh, by which, okay, any organization will be responsible for their carbon dioxide release into the environment. Now, so what we see is that some example is given. Okay, it says tracking carbon dioxide annually. Okay, so this is tons of carbon dioxide generated. Let's say the baseline year is 2001, which means from 2001 we started taking the carbon footprint. So in 2001, you can see somewhere around, we can say 2 lakh tons or 2 uh, tons of carbon dioxide was being generated. Then in 2002 it increased. Okay, then in 2003 it increased a lot. The reason was that new stores were added to the organization for which we are taking the carbon footprint. Okay, then it decreased a little bit because some measures would have been taken, then it decreased. Okay, then in 2006, okay, that you see there is a great difference. Okay, the carbon dioxide, it decreased a lot, those new stores were added because we started with something which is known as energy efficient efforts were started. And then in 2007 and 8 we see that we almost, decreased a lot again, having the same architecture, having the same organization. Why? Because now the organization started to focus on what we call it as renewable energy. So that is how, okay, at every point of time we have to see that what at all we can do, so that, we can reduce the impact onto the environment, we can reduce the release of carbon dioxide into the environment. Okay, so some mechanism we have to always take care about, so that we can reduce the carbon dioxide which is generated. Okay, so this is just an example. Okay, it could be of any organization, or we expect that any organization, okay, should be able to follow something like this. Now, based on the protocols, company must decide how to account for both direct and indirect emissions. Okay, so I think just now we talked about that any organization will have some activities which are directly, which would be happening into the organization, and there will be some indirect activities also. So then any organization whose carbon footprint has to be calculated, they will decide that which is a direct impact and which is an indirect impact, or which is a direct emission and which is indirect emission. Direct emission, these are from the sources that your company owns or controls. Okay, so the things which are a part of your organization. Okay, and if there is a carbon dioxide emission from it, then this will all come into direct emission. Some examples are just given. Okay, these are just examples, but depending on from organization to organization, these examples will differ. So one example is take a factory smokestacks, vents, company vehicles. Okay, so let's say if an organization is owning all of these things, then whatever carbon dioxide release is happening from all of these things, okay, a company will be directly responsible for it. Okay, these are some of the examples. In direct emission, a company could have, let's say, big manufacturing units. Okay, big units for generating electricity. Okay, smoke chimneys, something like that. Now, indirect emission, these are generated as a result of your company's activities, but occur in sources owned by someone else. Okay, so simple. Let's say, I we just discussed that I am using electricity. Okay, but then I am indirectly responsible. Why? Because I am not generating electricity. Electricity is being generated at some different place, but because I am using it, I'm indirectly responsible for it. Okay, so if for indirect emissions, the organization will not be owning those things, but still, because they are using it, okay, they will be a part of that carbon dioxide emission. For example, if you contract work out or your employees travel, those emissions are generated by third party, but because of you. Okay, so what we say, okay, at times we are responsible to generate some amount of emission, but these emissions don't occur at our place, they occur at some another's place, but they occur because of you. So uh, now these emissions will also be considered when we are actually calculating carbon footprint. Definitely whatever is there in the direct emission is anyhow going to be considered, but whatever indirect emissions are also there, they needs to be summed up and calculated while calculating the carbon footprint of our organization. Okay, why do you care about your carbon footprint? Okay, why it is very important for an organization to take care about carbon footprint? See, nowadays everyone wants to go eco-friendly. Okay, government is taking so many initiatives, people are also very much aware. They don't want to go with this organization. There are many ads which are released by bigger good brands, telling that they have become eco-friendly or what at all they are doing, and so on. So there are so many different aspects because of which, okay, you should be considered about your carbon footprint. In the sense, if it is just continuously increasing, then you should really be worried about it. Okay, why? Although measuring your carbon footprint is a very good way to measure your overall progress towards becoming green. Okay, this is the first aspect by which you will decide that whether you are going towards green environment or not. It isn't just for bragging rights or to keep up in the corner of the company newsletter to let anyone know how well you are doing. A good emission inventory can help with numerous business goals like helping your company to improve in its efficiencies, reducing costs. Okay, this is one of the most important thing. Okay, the cost will definitely be reduced to a lot extent once you go towards greening. Definitely there will be some initial cost that you have to bear. Okay, just taking an example over here, initially we was not using renewable sources. So definitely for the first time you go for renewable energy, you have to have a setup. There will be huge amount of investment that you will do, but then coming years you will get the award for that investment that you have done. Yeah, getting public recognition for taking action to reduce or eliminate the environment or the climate impact. So that there are so many good reasons why carbon footprint is always valuable for any organization. And we can say to improve the carbon footprint will definitely increase your identity as an organization. It will also help to reduce the cost. It can also improve health to a lot extent to the employees which are working on to the organization, as well as to the surrounding neighborhood of that organization. Definitely, in the last way, you are contributing a lot in saving the environment. So these are all the ideas behind, we can say, carbon footprint. Okay, so again we can just have a look at it. We understood what a carbon footprint is. Okay, then some examples by which we come to know that yes, we are actually responsible for uh, releasing CO2, or we can say greenhouse, into the environment. How any organization will measure its carbon footprint? So they will define uh, what is included into the, मतलब कौन कौन से एरियाज है जो हमारे ऑर्गेनाइजेशन में है जो एक्चुअली रिस्पॉन्सिबल है कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड एमिशन के लिए. सेटिंग अप द बेस लाइन हियर, track, calculate and analyze your footprint, report the results to the stakeholders. Then we saw some of the impacts, okay, and then we know that there are some impacts which are direct, matlab ki this place, from this place you are definitely responsible for releasing the carbon dioxide, and upstream and downstream impacts are basically, we can say, the indirect impacts, okay. So or we can say the indirect emissions. सो देन वी कम टू ओवर हियर, और हमने देखा कि कैसे ही कोई भी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन में डायरेक्ट एमिशन होता है, बहुत सारी चीज़ें होती है जो ऑर्गेनाइजेशन खुद ओन करता है और वो रिस्पॉन्सिबल होता है CO2 एमिशन के लिए. एंड देर आर सम थिंग्स, ओके, जो ऑर्गेनाइजेशन के पास नहीं है, बट समहाउ और द अदर ऑर्गेनाइजेशन थर्ड पार्टी से अगर वो चीज़ें यूज़ कर रहा है, तो देन दे आर रिस्पॉन्सिबल फॉर, वी कैन से, दी इनडायरेक्ट एमिशंस ऑल्सो. Every year we should always take care that our carbon footprint should be, we can say, go go towards betterment. Now betterment of carbon footprint का मतलब ये होता है कि जो टर्न्स ऑफ कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड जो जनरेट हो रहे हैं हमारे, वो कम होने चाहिए, या एटलीस्ट, ओके, इट शुड बी नियर बाय टू व्हाट हैज हैपेंड इन टू द प्रीवियस ईयर, or bit less than that, okay. If we are doing this, then only we can say we are improving our carbon footprint. Why we should take care about carbon footprint? So that we can do something good for the environment, we can be towards becoming green, okay. We can also improve our organization and make it more efficient, we can reduce the cost, okay, and we can have a good identity as becoming one of an organization who is taking, let's say, some good initiatives for the environment, okay. So yes, this all is behind, we can say, carbon footprint. Now, we have taken an example about thin client. Okay, I think, yeah. So I will come to this example later on. Now, uh, the next and the last aspect of this chapter is about cost savings. Okay. Now, cost savings, which means we are not discussing basically how we can save the cost, but then we are discussing about the areas for saving the cost. Okay. So